regardless of gender and honestly, regardless of age, once you hit that teenage, year. And so I feel like this is the biggest thing because a lot of times in certain cultures, the man is the primary breadwinner and the man feels like I have to support my family. And that's very noble.
Yeah.
But sometimes you could do it, sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
And in the United States, you need to be able to drive. You need to be able to go places. You need to be able to lessen the burden on your husband who's working all day by going to the grocery store, by doing this and doing that. And I feel like it takes a while for some of them to understand that because of the cultural barrier.
Yes. Welcome to So Where Are You From? I'm your host, Nishin Bagheri, a first-generation Iranian-American by identity and an immigration attorney by profession. Today, we're joined by Dr. Mona Megahed, who is a pediatrician and the vice president and co-founder of the nonprofit organization Ettehar. Ettehar is an organization that was founded with a mission in assisting the resettlement of refugees here in the U.S. So I have to ask the question I ask all my guests. So where are you from?
So I actually was born in Houston, Texas, but my parents are from Egypt.
Okay, wonderful. No wonder if I did not know that. So now, when did you move to Atlanta?
Shortly after I got married in 2005.
Okay, wonderful. So today's topic is about the refugee resettlement. And I think, so a lot of my social media followers have, if they follow me, have seen that I personally conduct annual donation drives to help the refugees who recently arrived and come with nothing. And what I try to provide is like hygiene products to winter coats. And I've conducted these drives for over about 13 years and worked alongside many nonprofits here in Georgia. And thanks to my generous donors, I've been able to assist hundreds of families over the years. However, what I try to do during these drives is educate the community about the refugee plight and to kind of clear out the misconceptions about, what it entails and how they arrive and what's provided for them in this resettlement process. And so that's why I'm happy to invite you today to talk about it, to kind of explain the process and the arrival to what these nonprofits such as yours, Ettehar, does to help resettle them and what that entails. So today we're going to talk about how and why one becomes a refugee, the international process to apply as a refugee and to be assigned in the U.S., and how the many nonprofits in the U.S. are established to help resettle the refugees that do arrive and what that assistance entails of. So Mona, those who are considered refugees, what population do they usually consist of, and what are the factors that they have to claim to be a refuge to another country?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. And I really do appreciate all the hard work that you do throughout the year. I mean, firsthand, we've seen your collection drives and how, effective they are. And you guys prefer to go to the homes and visit with the families. So it's very personal, adds a really nice touch. So I do appreciate that.
Couldn't have done it without your assistance and guidance. I mean, you help us find them and help us.
Thank you so much. So, our refugees currently consist of many families from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Dominican Republic of Congo, Burma, so Burmese refugees, some even from Palestine, some from Somalia, some from Sudan. And I'm sure I'm missing many. Yeah. But these are some of the nationalities that we have been asked to assist with since we kind of started our refugee work back in 2016. When a family is being persecuted in their homeland or country and they feel unsafe to live there any longer, they can qualify for refugee status. Now, there is another classification, which is something completely different. You could probably elaborate more on this with your legal background, but when families seek like political asylum. So that's something different, but we're going to focus on refugees. So they're feeling unsafe. They're being forced out of their homes, whether it be war or persecution. Those are the families that we predominantly help and are considered as refugees. The process from application to the time they set foot here in the U.S. is about 2 years.
Wow.
So it is a very long process. And they have to provide a lot of documentation, which sometimes can be tricky because if you're forced to flee your home in the middle of the night with nothing except your children and what's on your backpack, you may not have those forms. If your, home was bombed, you may not have access to those forms. So a lot of times, even to find those forms is a process. If you don't have your passports, that's a process. And, it's a drooling process. So I think that's part of the reason why it takes so long, in addition to a lot of security benefits that the US takes. So they will look and search and make sure that the family that's coming to the US is not going to be a threat to the United States. Mm-hmm. So typically it takes about 2 years, 24 months.
And these refugees, once they flee their country, they usually go to a third country. Is it like a designated country they go to, or is it anywhere that they can get to and then apply?
So a lot of times it's anywhere they can get to that's within the proximity of their own country. For example, the families that we help that are of Syrian origin, they usually end up coming to the U.S. from Egypt, Jordan, or Turkey.
Okay.
And initially when they go there, they will stay in refugee camps. And they will stay there for as long as needed until they're able to either come to the US, so that could be 2 years, or if they do have like family members that live there or have some financial means where they can maybe buy an apartment or something, sometimes they stay there and they become established there and then realize, well, actually, no, we can't live here. We need to move. Mm-hmm. So it usually is countries they can go to. And a lot of times they are offered minimal benefits, but at least it's secure and safe.
Do they have a choice to pick where they want to go? Like they say, I want to go to the U.S., I want to enter the U.S. Is it by choice, or is it where a country will take them? Because everyone has like the U.S. has a status of how many they accept per year.
I think it's a combination. So a lot of times they may have a preference to come to the U.S. because they have a family member that was resettled here the year prior. Mm-hmm. So right now we're seeing actually a lot of our Syrian families that resettled in 5 years ago or 4 years ago, their parents are coming or their siblings are coming. And if they are coming to the U.S., a lot of them will say, well, I really want to go to Georgia because I have my cousin in Georgia. And they do try to honor that.
Okay. So I think what people get confused is, so for example, the refugee, what people ask me, someone wants to apply as a refugee. That is not something that we do internally. We do the process for as immigration attorneys. That's something they have to deal with international organizations to apply for, where the equal to that, if you're applying within the U.S., is the asylum process. That's when you're at the port of entry or in the U.S., that's the asylum. But if you're applying from abroad, that's the refugees process. One concept, I think, and I'm trying from, when I'm doing these donation drives, some misconceptions, like I think people see that the refugees that we help, like majority are Muslims, and they think it's like a Muslim-based organization. But to clarify that, it really depends. Every year can be from a different country. It depends where there's war and strife, and it's not based on a religious, particular religion.
No, not at all. So when families are accepted to the U.S., and I can speak specifically of Georgia, the Refugee Resettlement Agency handles their case. Mm-hmm. There are 4 resettlement agencies in the Metro Atlanta area. So we have the International Rescue Committee, IRC, we have New American Pathway, we have Catholic Charities, and we have Inspiritus. Mm-hmm. Those resettlement agencies are in charge of taking on that family. So as soon as they arrive in the airport, they meet them at the airport. They're then in charge of helping them kind of get on their feet.
Yeah.
It is not religion-based. They will help anyone that is a refugee and has been already filtered and accepted into the process. They will provide basic things. So for example, every family member is given about $1,225. This is not given to them in their hand. It's just a sum of money that's allotted to them. Now, to be very clear, that sum of money is used for deposits for an apartment, their rent, their food until their food stamps kick in, any furniture that is not donated, so has to be purchased and provided in their apartment, any Uber rides or something that they're going to need to take to get to the health department for vaccines or the school. So really that money can run dry pretty quickly.
Yes.
And once that money runs dry, sometimes these families are accepted into what they call a match grant program, where if they have a job, half of their rent will be paid for by the family and the other half by the resettlement agency. And that's for like a period of 4 to 6 months. And sometimes they don't have spots in that match grant program where that program isn't even offered. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when people think of refugees and, oh, they're being helped for 2 years, that's not really the case.
Yeah.
They're being helped for about 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And it also depends on family size. So if it's a couple, they're making like $2,500. That's their welcome money. But they're not going to get a job right away.
Yeah.
Their food stamps take about a month to kick in. They still have to learn how to drive for transportation. So they're not going to be able to drive or get a car until a lot later in the process. So they're really left with very little.
Yeah.
That's why, when people do these drives, or when other organizations like ETHAR or Women's Refugee Network, or, other ones that kind of, they're community-based and supplement the work of the resettlement agencies, they really do, because they kind of pick it up afterwards and say, okay, how can I help you a little longer in order for you to become established and self-sufficient? Yeah. Studies have shown that it takes at least 2 years for someone to really be comfortable in their move. I've moved around a lot within the United States, and I speak English, and I'm, born and raised here, but even then, every move is a struggle. Now, imagine that you're moving cross country, you don't know the language, you don't know the system, you've been through trauma upon trauma, and then in 6 months, they're like, okay, see ya, you're on your own, It's really hard.
Yeah. I think that's where I used to do it with a friend, and then now I've gone kind of solo, but of course with the help of my community, where I remember when I started talking with these different nonprofits, that it was like after 3 months that the help ended in a sense. And that's where we would pick up. We would do the hygiene products, like the food. I would try to cover things that food stamps couldn't, or even heavy items, like, for example, rice bags or something, because you have to understand they don't have cars. The grocery store is not down the street. They're like in these little, communities. Yeah. And so I think that was my concept of providing hygiene products that are expensive, like diapers, just laundry detergent, the big bulky stuff, to help them so they don't have to like take the bus to go over a mile just to get these basic needs. And then I started doing the biannual with the winter coats, because like you say, they just come with a backpack. They come with nothing. You have to leave everything behind. And so to help them brave the storm, like for the kids. And coats are expensive. So that's where I try to tell people that we're trying to help on the other end, where once the help by the organizations, technically ends. And it is a short period because, one, I remember like within these 3 months, 2 to 3 months, that, they get they have to learn English. They take you only provide ELC classes for a certain amount of period, or how to drive, or help them find a job. And then if it's not done within that time, it's kind of like, okay, you're on your own, which is scary. And so it's a lot. I remember I would have people the other misconception is when they see me delivering to these apartment complexes, someone's like, oh, I wish the U.S. government will help the homeless here in the U.S. How come they have these homes? But isn't it true, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, that these monies that they're given, it's also like a loan, is it not? Or is it more, because if their flight's over, they have to pay for eventually?
So the welcome money, that is given to them. That's not a loan. But you're absolutely right. It is very expensive to fly cross country. We just came back from Egypt. We're a family of 5. We paid an arm and a leg. Yeah. Now, they have to pay that money back. Mm-hmm. So if you're a family of 8 or 9, and each ticket costs $800, and that's just generous, you're looking at $6,000 to $7,000 that you have to pay back. Now, granted, you can pay $10 a month, but look at how long you're going to be paying that back. Yeah. So it is a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot on them, and like you say, they come with nothing. So by the time they get their foot in the door, they get working and learning English, it takes takes time, and they need that time. What have you seen to be one of the biggest cultural adjustments for these families?
I think with the family subset that we have been working for the most part, which is families of Syrian descent and families from Afghanistan, only because those crises have happened since 2015. We kind of started in 2016. It is the fact that a woman needs to be empowered.
Yeah.
And a woman needs to work.
Yes.
It needs to almost be the primary contact person. So, in my household, if my kids are sick, I get the call first, right? And I have to leave work and pick them up.
Yes.
If my kids are struggling in school, the teacher contacts me. Mm-hmm. Living in the United States is not cheap by any means. And so dual income is really the way to go. When, my kids right now, I have twins that are 14 and a son that's 11. One of them already started working. She's like, you know what? I need stuff. I'm going to,
Yeah.
So you have to be out there and visible, regardless of gender, and honestly, regardless of age, once you hit that teenage, year. And so I feel like this is the biggest thing, because a lot of times in certain cultures, the man is the primary breadwinner, and the man feels like I have to support my family. And that's very noble.
Yeah.
But sometimes you could do it, sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
And in the United States, you need to be able to drive. You need to be able to go places. You need to be able to lessen the burden on your husband who's working all day by going to the grocery store, by doing this and doing that. And I feel like it takes a while for some of them to understand that because of the cultural barrier.
Yes. I remember there was this one family, it was a few years back, that I kind of helped more on helping them settle, they had issues with their rent, with the landlord, there was problems in the apartments. And it was an Afghan couple with one young child. And of course, the one income was enough. And so we try to teach them, it's okay, you go working during the day or at night, you and your wife need to work shifts and take turns watching the baby. But that concept of the man staying home watching the baby, it was no, it's a faux pas. It's I'm no, well, welcome to America. You do have to work. You both have to work and, divide the labor of the household. And that was a culture shock to them. And then there was another family where the wife lost her husband in Afghanistan. She came with, I think it was 3 or 4 kids. And the oldest was a son. And so she had to learn quickly that she was the head of the household. She had to go out there and work. But the son felt like he was the man of the house, kind of the old-fashioned thing. And we would have to teach him, no, you respect your mom. You need to do the chores. While your mom's working, you need to wash the dishes. You need to help with the cooking. And so that was kind of for the son, it's wait, what? It's he thought he had to be the man. So it is quite a culture shock. But do you see them adjusting over time, or they still kind of resist?
No, absolutely. It takes a while. Yeah. But I think, that's something that IFAR tries to do is we're going to empower you to be able to provide for yourself and live a comfortable lifestyle, a contributing lifestyle in the U.S. And, what I've seen is it probably takes a little over a year for them to be okay, through our experience last year, we're barely making ends meet.
Yeah.
This $15 an hour job is not sufficient. We need to do something. And then once they realize that, immediately their lives turn for the better, because you have a dual income household. You have a woman who is supporting her husband, even if she's not working, but she's able to take care of the kids with their school, with their homework, take them to doctor's appointments, do the grocery shopping, whatnot. It eases the burden on the working person when they come home and they're tired. They don't then have to go out and do all the housework as well.
I'm sure you see a lot of this as well, mental health issues of the arrivals, for example, post-traumatic stress, trauma, even that you even see, I remember one time I was doing a drive with you, and you would point out to some of these refugees that I was just seeing that this man used to be a professor back home, or this used to be an attorney back home, and they've had to all their hard work was just kind of gone, and they had to start from zero all over again. And I'm sure especially for a male, that it really it hits mentally, mental health. What have you seen, and do you guys provide services for that as well?
Yeah, that would be one of the other things that, you mentioned, what sort of culture shocks do they have? This would be one of them. We've had lawyers, we've had doctors, we've had dentists that were very successful back home, led very lavish, comfortable lifestyles, and all of a sudden they lose everything.
And I think people, one thing, don't realize, they forget that I think the conception of refugees, like they're the poorer class that coming in, and it's not so true.
It's really sad, but with what's going on in Sudan right now, I have a close friend of mine here who's a physician. Her entire family was in Sudan.
Wow.
Very successful. They have lost everything. And she tells me about the struggles that they're enduring, not only physically, but also mentally.
Yeah.
It is very hard to lose everything that you've worked for so long and have to start from scratch. And starting from scratch is not easy. Add on a language barrier, add on a different country.
Responsibility to the family.
Responsibility for your kids. Yeah. It's so hard. So when you take a physician or a lawyer and you say, okay, now you have to work, in home goods, just, moving items for $13, $14, $15 an hour, that is a real stab to your ego.
Yeah.
And you think, how am I ever going to make it to where I was before? Because, you're adding on a language barrier.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. And so, mental health has become a crisis, I think, really worldwide, especially since COVID. And, I'm a pediatrician. I don't really see well visits anymore. A lot of times it's well visits, but I'm anxious, but I don't want to go to school, but I'm feeling sad. Mental health has become something that pediatricians now treat because, the wait time to see a psychiatrist is up to 6 months. And you want to help them now because you don't want this to turn into something worse where it really impacts their life and their ability to function in society. And so we are seeing so many refugees that have depression, have post-traumatic stress, but we're also seeing some that have undiagnosed schizophrenia or undiagnosed bipolar. And it is really hard to work with these families and make them realize that we think that you have a mental health issue and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, mental health still is not accepted everywhere, that concept.
Yeah, say, wait a second, you're calling me crazy? Yeah. I'm not crazy. No, we're not calling you crazy.
It doesn't exist. Depression, anxiety doesn't exist.
You've been through significant life changes that are traumatic. And without addressing that trauma, it will be very hard to live a comfortable lifestyle and provide for your family and continue. And so to get them to understand that takes a long time.
Yeah.
And then I think once they do, we do have some psychiatrists that we work with that provide care pro bono. And there are also some organizations like Positive Growth that's located in Clarkston that also provides therapy and psychological assistance if needed. But a lot of times, 3/4 of the battle is just getting them to understand that you have depression, which is just like saying your child has asthma. All right, it is an illness, and it is treatable, and this is the way you treat it. Yeah. So that really is probably the toughest part. But once they comprehend and understand that, then finding help is a little easier because they're open to it.
Yeah. It's until they want to, until they realize. You can't force them until they get to that point to realize
Absolutely. Because, when you have a 5-year-old, you could just pick them up, strap them in their car seat and take them to the doctor. Yeah. When you're dealing with a 28-year-old, a 30-year-old, they have to really want that help in order to get it.
Yeah. I can't imagine what they go through. I mean, it's just a whole uplift of life. But one thing that amazes me, that keeps me going, because it's always, it's saddening to see that, when you enter these homes, but it's the funniest thing I have to say, whenever I go to these communities where the families are located, like here in Georgia, you'll see these little children. They hardly have anything, but they're the happiest kids I've ever seen. Where we have like spoiled teenagers who have everything, and it's not enough. And it's just always lightens me up of like the simplicity of life, takes you back to that simplicity. Like you give them a ball. Like I remember I had an extra donation my night. I bought a football, and the eyes of this kid lit up with just a ball. And it's like, it's the most beautiful experience. Like they just appreciate, the appreciation is amazing.
Absolutely. I had just a quick anecdote. I visited a family that was originally from Sudan, but came from Egypt. And we were delivering some items to them, and I had my kids, and it was raining, it was pouring. Mm-hmm. So my kids were like, we're just gonna stay in the car, it's raining too hard, and I was like, okay. So I take the umbrella out, and I'm just taking one item at a time into the house. And then the 11-year-old, she's like, Khalto, can I come and help you? And I said, yeah, sure, let's go under the umbrella together. And she's like, no. I don't see rain often. I want to skip in the rain. So she got soaked, but she was so happy. And I was like, oh my God, like they don't even care about the items I'm bringing. They are just excited to be out in the rain. Wow. And I told my kids, I was like, you guys have to get out too. So they did, but they even were like, wow, she hadn't seen rain. And I was like, I know. And we take so many things for granted.
So much for granted.
These simple things.
I remember at one point, it was really a complicated drive. I did bikes. I collected used bikes. And so you can only fit so many in a car and keep taking it down there. But we'll deliver these bikes, and oh my God, these kids, it's like a sense of freedom for them to get out of these crowded apartments, dark apartments, to just go outside and ride free, And just the happiness was just amazing. Or getting a pair of shoes. And it was just, it's touching. It's very humbling. I love it. But then it's like my poor kids, later that day, I'm like, you guys, I try not to take it out on my own kids. But they're just amazing. The kids are beautiful. And we did one time, I think it was with some people from Georgia State, this organization, Georgia State, that we did a Eid festival. Yeah. Oh my God, we just had those hot air, those bouncy houses and candies and treats. They were just loving. We did it in a little community cul-de-sac. It was beautiful. It was really awesome. So those give me hope, when I see that it's not all dreary, it's not all sad. And then as I've gotten older, even current friends, I never realized they came through the refugee process, and now they're doctors and dentists and so forth. So that gives me such hope that they do come out on the other end, that they do pull out from those tough years and from that trauma. How have you seen your clientele as they've gone through this process?
Yeah, the big thing is the family, again, has to have that motivation. Mm-hmm. Like, I've been through hardship. Nobody understands the hardship except for people that have gone through the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But I'm going to overcome. And not only am I going to overcome and acclimate to living in the U.S., I am going to take it on as my country.
Yeah.
And I am going to go above and beyond to prove myself capable and to prove myself as a contributing member of society. When they get to that point, the sky is the limit.
Yeah.
They don't
take for granted. They use the system and they pursue as much as they can.
Because they truly start from nothing.
Yeah.
And they're adamant to achieve the American dream that, is hard to achieve.
Yeah.
Right? Because the American dream doesn't come free. It comes with work.
And sacrifice.
And a lot of sacrifice. And so we have seen, because I moved here in 2016, so we kind of started working with refugees here in Georgia at that time. I did. Mm-hmm. And I am now looking back and seeing some of these students that came in when they were in high school that are in dental school, that are studying pharmacy, that really want to make it.
Yeah.
That gives me hope.
Yes.
So a lot of times with the parents, it's a little harder because they're forced to take any job so they can provide for their family. So the growth will be a little harder. Yeah. Why? Because they can only take classes on the weekend to better their English. And once they better their English, then, they can provide, they can maybe look for better options and better jobs. And and provide more to their family. But it's these students that you can see, they're like sponges. They're learning English every day. They're picking up the language really fast. And then they are, just doing amazing things. And that's what gives me hope.
Yes.
So a lot of times I tell people, like, I'm on Facebook, and I won't Facebook friend most of the clients, because I'm like, okay, this is, professionalism. Like, I don't, Facebook friend my patients, but I do befriend some of the high schoolers because I like to see this grow. And it is amazing.
And it keeps you motivated in the work that you do. I'm sure that helps with the work that you do, because it is hard. It's emotional. It's very, I don't know how you guys do it. It's very hard, emotional, time consuming. You have to be very patient. It's a lot, but to see that end product.
When I first started, I would cry after I left every home.
Yeah.
Because they would tell me about their stories, and their stories was something that, I could read about, but I never could imagine knowing someone that had to endure that.
Yeah.
But then I think I've turned that into, okay, so they've led a really, really rough life. How can we make things better for them? And so I've turned it into that, where let's welcome them to the US in a very dignified manner. Let's supplement them initially with basic necessities and comfort to have them start on the right foot. And along the way, let's be their cheerleaders. Let's provide for them things that will better their life here in the US. And so funneling that energy into that has helped me, on a personal level. And then just watching, the magic happen and watch them really get to where they want to be. That's been huge.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how would you say the refugee community contributes to the economy? Because I know that with the immigration, everyone feels like they're stealing jobs, people that come in, immigrants, but how can you explain how the refugee community actually helps our economy?
Well, I think initially, a lot of the jobs that are available to them are jobs that are not necessarily desired by Americans.
Yeah.
It's the, restaurant, factory jobs. So there's a chicken factory that, the job is very exhausting, but they always have open spots. Why? Because nobody wants those jobs. So who takes them on? It is the refugees that come on. Fish factories, right? A lot of times restaurants, being a dishwasher at a restaurant. So this is where they stop. So I always feel like they're not stealing jobs. They're taking available jobs that nobody else wants.
Exactly.
Right? And then when you see these students that go to dental school, that in 4 years, they might be my dentist, well, they're definitely contributing to the economy because they are giving back in a very selfless way.
Yes.
And so I always argue that, no, they're being assisted with programs that already exist to assist them. They're not creating extra burden. These programs exist. But then what do they do once they're given that primary assistance initially? And how do they then provide to the economy?
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mona, for joining me today. I've always wanted to add some tidbits of information about this plight every time I post about my annual donation drive, just for people to understand, because there's so much misconception about everything that surrounds it. They just see something, pictures and so forth, and not understand the background of it all. Your organization is amazing. I've worked with you guys for the last few years, and I can't thank you enough. Because of you, you've given me that access to help people in my community. Thanks you. I look forward to working alongside you for years to come. Hopefully, we can keep going with these donation drives and assist them as much as we can, because if, like I always say, if you're blessed, we're blessed to give back. And so it's a way to give back. And I always think about good karma. I'm like, there might be a time one day, God forbid, I will need assistance. With this world, you just never know. So I feel like, you give back. So one day you're put in that situation. So there's an angel there that kind of gives you back when you need it.
Yes.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I will post add information about ETAR and their website. So if anyone's interested in donating or helping out, that they'll know who to contact.
Thank you so much, Nusheen, for having me. This is amazing what you're doing, and
Appreciate
just
it.
raising that awareness is always kind of the first step. So really appreciate your time too.
Thank you. You have a great day.